Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of What Did We See in the LEC of our summer split. Our league is finally back and we have a lot of interesting things to talk about. I was excited for the Super Week, loved the idea by the way, and it delivered. We've had a lot of great games, high quality games which we don't usually see so early in the splits. From all that we've seen, there's a certain team I'm personally really excited about from their first 3 games, the Misfits. Misfits have made a roster change between the splits and for the better. Kobe is a massive upgrade over B-Boy in any regard I can think of. He even speaks fluent English, which should of course help with the communication. They also brought in DOS to the lineup to share time with Danik at the support role. I personally think Danik was fine, and I don't know what they've seen in scrims that made them bring up DOS, but even though it's Misfits we're talking about, it feels like there's at least some thought behind the move. Now, let's go over the actual games. I'll start by saying that although they ended the week with a 1-2 record, they looked pretty damn good. Their bot lane was dominant and Febiven and Rezor came in seemingly a great form. Let's look at their games and I'll try to show you some of the potential I have seen in this team to get you as excited as I am about it. Let's start with their game versus Fnatic, which demonstrates Misfits' strengths really well. In this game, Razor played for bot side dominance and Misfits managed to brutally stomp 2 lanes before criminally throwing the game on more than one occasion. Let's get into the game. At the 3rd minute, Razor came mid for a gank. Nemesis did not react in time and died, giving Misfits the mid priority. Razor moved back to the bot side scuttle while Febi worked on shoving the lane. The bot lane wave was pushing away from Fnatic, and their bot lane had to play safely as they could have been collapsed on by 3 or 4 people. Razork and Febi decided to go for the double scuttle though instead, which I don't completely agree with, but anyway, Healy made sure Misfits could get the kill bot nonetheless. At the 11th minute, Misfits wanted to go for a play on Bwipo, swapping back after the Herald. Razork flanked from behind, but Selfmade smartfully snuck into the lane unspotted. Razork went for the play, Selfmade, Nemesis and Reckless reacted, and Fnatic got themselves 3 kills and slowed down the game. The game slowed down as Misfits couldn't really force any more fights versus Alyssian with 3 kills, and the game got into a stalemate. At the 20th minute, Febi did a nasty play, baiting a lot of Fnatic's tools and stalling enough for his team to chunk everyone out. Let's watch his beautiful move.
What's really interesting is, Febi, we'll get out of this one, no problem, how the first pick, I think, has affected the draft so much. Febi, you're in a little bit of trouble, but...
And it just to sidestep a lot of the CC, Selfmade comes in, True Shot Barrage comes down, Dragon Rage is available, flash away, Sleepy Trouble Bubble onto Bwipo, Paddle Star on the behind. There's a gold card though that connects
Dandan's
onto
ult is just about to come up, they can look to chase this.
Let's find out, Cannon Barrage is available, DOS, will he get chucked in from the Fate's Call?
Misfits very aggressively turned to the Baron after that, and turned off it beautifully recognizing Nemesis' bad positioning. Misfits got 3 kills and secured their Baron. They took back the driving seat off of this amazing play by Febiven. Misfits used the Baron to take down the top inhib. They also tried to secure the mid inhib, but went in too aggressively for that and couldn't secure it. At the 26th minute, DOS got a great pick onto Selfmade, which made Healy suicide to save him. Misfits again tried to overforce the mid inhib instead of setting up the Drake, which would be Fnatic's soul. Misfits couldn't get a tower, they got a kill in that exchange but crucially lost Kobe's and Dandan's flashes. They also based way too late because of that fight, which made them lose the Dragon Soul. Even so, they aggressively forced the fight on the running Fnatic members, got 2 kills and took bot and mid inhibs. To win the game, all they had to do was to force Fnatic to fight them at the Baron. They got 2 inhibs on the opposite side of the map, and they should have just forced the globals, which they did, until someone from Fnatic had to answer the wave and get the 5v4 teamfight. They obviously didn't, and that Baron was all Fnatic's comp needed to finally get their late game spikes and choke Misfits out of the game. We saw Misfits making some very aggressive calls to fight, some successful and some unsuccessful. They managed to get their huge lead even after throwing it with their mid laner showing his insane mechanical ability and their jungler having a stellar early game. Selfmade have managed to pull Fnatic back into the game for a bit, and 2 really bad calls to overforce a fight and a Baron were all that prevented Misfits from winning the match. Misfits' second game of the week was versus Rogue. In this game, Misfits had some draft issues. First of all, I hate J4. In Europe, it's the pick that the jungler takes when he doesn't know what to pick. J4 almost never works, as it's either being picked with comps that don't fight or uses terrain well, or as the first jungle pick when someone has to blind pick the jungler. In this game, it was picked with 3 scaling lanes, and it was supposed to bridge this comp into the late game somehow. Furthermore, the Karma versus the Thresh lane is pretty hard to play, especially versus Rek'Sai that can easily come from behind for the kills. Laning phase shouldn't be playable for Misfits bot lane as they lose the 2v2 and the 3v3. All they have to account for is the fact that Fabi might win his lane, and even that was gone as Larsen got first blood in their cheesy level 1 play around bot. At 3:30, after ganking bot and killing the Karma for the second time, Inspired recalled and smartfully pathed mid to make sure Larsen can safely shove. Rezork was there, and the counter gank was brutal. This gank from Rezork was pretty risky, as they should have known Inspired could be there, though Rogue is one of the teams that practically never invest in mid. Anyway, the jungle is lost, the bot lane is lost, the mid lane is lost, and Misfits had to slow down the game before it snowballed completely out of control. Instead of slowing down, Misfits decided to force a fight around Herald, which they lost, and then another skirmish around mid, which they've lost. And instead of slowingly trying to scale, they decided to bash their head in a big, very fed wall, or ball in this case. The game of course snowballed out of their control and Rogue won it convincingly. In their last game versus OG, we again saw Misfits bashing their head against the wall, only this time the wall broke in the end, but this game could have been much cleaner. At the 5th minute, OG initiated a great play. They've used the fact that their bot lane recalled first to send Destiny mid and get mid prior. They used this priority to move over to the top side and dive Dandan, denying him a wave and getting themselves a kill. Misfits have initiated a similar play on the bot side of the map, but instead of making peace with the fact that they denied a wave and backing off, they have decided to try and commit. Dandan TP'd, and they of course didn't get anything from it, as Alphari matched and soaked the wave OG were supposed to lose. Now if we take a look at the topside wave, it looks like a disaster in the making. A gigantic wave was slowly making its way into Alphari's tower, and they had made it in time to catch it. With a 30 CS lead at the 7th minute, OG's side laner looked unstoppable at this point. Luckily for Misfits, OG didn't snowball off of this lead at all, even though they should have used the next wave to dive Dandan again, or at least zone him from the tower. Misfits' over-aggressive early game TP had cost them again. Few minutes have passed of OG being lost as they don't know how to accelerate leads, they highly prioritize soaking waves, and their jungler highly prioritizes farm, which makes them incapable of snowballing. Luckily for them, Misfits have bashed their head against the wall. Again. At the 17th minute, although not being on item spikes, as opposed to their enemies, and although they already had 2 drakes, which meant they didn't have to contest this one, Misfits have decided to try and fight for the dragon. They obviously got hard stomped, losing the drake and 2 kills off of that. At the 22nd minute, they tried to do the exact same thing again. They have decided to contest the drake, but OG's setup didn't let them move into the pit. Instead, they have decided to go and rush the baron. They barely escaped, losing 2 members on their way out. A smarter setup and or reaction from Origin should have made this the game breaking point in their favor. Their relentless passion to not start the dragon had cost them the baron. At the 25th minute, Misfits bashed again, this time successfully. They went for an all-in top, trying to use the baron to gain some towers. Upset hinted, and they won the fight and took an inhib off of that. From here on out, they smoothly sailed to the W, as their bashing had finally opened the door. They could have just waited for the guy with the key though. After we've analyzed their games, let's go over the strengths and weaknesses we've seen. Strengths. Strong early game jungler and bot lane. I did not expect Kobe and DOS to come out and play as well as they did in the laning phase. Admittedly, there was that rogue draft we're ignoring here, but in their 2 games versus OG and Fnatic, they have generally dominated their opponents, never getting their wave to a bad state while setting up some really aggressive plays. They of course couldn't have done it without Rezork, who again, except for that wretched rogue game, made sure to free up Febiven so that the bot lane could play as aggressively as they like and go for those 2v2s, 3v2s and 4v2s. Secondly, they have an insane mid laner. Febi should have been the player of the week for me, even with that 1-2 scoreline if it wasn't for Larsen. His ability to play with Rezork at the right times, his mechanics that were so on point, his ability to roam and set up picks and fights, and his wave management that had put his opponents on so many vulnerable positions, made Misfits look unstoppable for times. If he keeps up this form, he could carry 4 monkeys into the playoffs. Lastly, even though this would also come back to bite them in the weaknesses department, the Misfits crew is very decisive. They call fast and they all commit to the calls. There is no hesitation at all. And that's how you get leads in snowball mid-games. It helped them achieve that insane lead versus Fnatic, and it helped them win their game versus OG earlier than expected. And now, let's go over to their weaknesses. Dandan. He did not play well this week. Rezok didn't really give much attention to the top lane, but the guy died and burned summoners too many times in weird scenarios, and even failed to execute his picks in some teamfights, which he was known to do well. It seems like Misfits can't really play through him, as they might not be able to count on him with a lead, and this might come back to haunt them later in the split. Secondly, and most importantly, their over-aggressiveness. I've used this expression like 8 times in the review. This team is very decisive, but they take a lot of fights and risks they shouldn't take throughout the entire game. Early game TPs, Herald flips, unwinnable dragon fights, risky and stupid barons, overforcing inhibs. I think there was not an over-aggressive play Misfits haven't done this week. Then why am I excited? Because that's a fine weakness to have in such a young roster. They remind me of Mad Lions of middle of the spring split. They also, as opposed to that Mad Lions, have 2 veterans that can help them develop a bit faster by taking the calls into their own hands. This team had showed me an exciting ceiling that with a bit more tweaking might and should get them to the top 4. From their mechanical prowess to their commitment to their calls, with an insane mid laner, this team is my dark horse of the year, and in my opinion will make it far in the playoffs if the coaching staff helps them develop correctly. Thank you everyone so much for watching. Check out my channel for more videos that I have done. I'll see you in next week's episode of What Did We See in the LEC. Be sure to subscribe to check it out.